You think this is just business? Think again. The words echoed in my head as I stepped out of my aging sedan, rain slicking the city streets into a blur of neon reflections. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the memory of the email that had arrived that morning. An invitation, or more accurately, a mandate. At 26, juggling 2 jobs to keep my apartment and bills afloat, I had no time for fairy tales, let alone arranged marriages with men whose names carried weight I didn't understand. Yet here I was, standing before a sleek black SUV, the doors swinging open with quiet authority, revealing him. Ethan Blackwood. His presence was magnetic, and for a moment, the world shrank to the space between us. Dark hair perfectly styled, eyes the color of storm clouds, and a suit that could swallow the streetlights whole. No words, just that look, the one that weighed 100 pounds, demanding attention. "Lily Harper," he said, voice low but carrying, slicing through the rhythm of the rain. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've been informed about the arrangement?" He didn't wait for an answer. His gaze scanned me, sharp and precise, as if he could measure my fear and resistance in inches. The SUV doors closed behind him, sealing off any option of escape. My breath hitched as he gestured, not rudely, but with unshakable intent, toward the passenger seat. Hesitation froze me. The world seemed too wet, too slick, too real. I thought about my tiny apartment, the bills, the student loans, and a life I had carefully balanced on caffeine and sheer willpower. And yet, every rational thought faltered under his watchful eyes. Sliding into the car, I felt the leather seat embrace me, cool and unyielding. Ethan didn't speak, only let the engine purr, the hum filling the space with quiet dominance. I stole a glance at him, every movement deliberate, controlled. The city lights streaked past as he drove, but it felt like time had slowed. Then he finally spoke. "This marriage is just business, but that doesn't mean you're free." The words hit like the first drop of rain in a storm, soft, yet unstoppable. I opened my mouth, to argue, to protest, but the truth was in the undertone. He was already asserting claim, weaving power into every syllable, testing the edges of my defiance. I clenched my fists in my lap, nails biting into my palms, feeling that blend of fear and awe tighten around me. His eyes flicked to mine for a heartbeat longer than necessary, holding a question I didn't know how to answer, before returning to the road. We drove in silence, yet the air was thick, charged with unspoken rules, silent contracts, and a tension that pressed at my chest. The skyscrapers blurred by, neon reflections spilling into the car like liquid fire, and I realized that my life, in the span of a single morning, had been pulled from the safe rhythms I had built into a world where I knew the limits. Now, those limits were being redrawn in the quiet authority of Ethan Blackwood, in a car that felt like a cage and a promise wrapped in the guise of business. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud in my ears, and I knew that the days ahead would challenge every ounce of independence, courage, and stubbornness I had cultivated. Somewhere beneath the surface, a spark of curiosity flickered. I needed to understand him, to survive, to navigate a game I hadn't agreed to play. And as the SUV glided over the slick streets, I realized this was only the beginning. The honeymoon, I thought grimly, would not be a vacation. The streets outside the limousine were empty now, the rain a persistent drum against the windows, blurring the city lights into streaks of red and gold. Lily Harper sat rigid, hands folded in her lap, watching Ethan Blackwood drive with meticulous precision, his posture unyielding, shoulders squared, eyes fixed ahead as though he could see through the asphalt into the bones of the city itself. The car moved smoothly, almost silent, except for the gentle hum of the engine and the occasional swish of windshield wipers. Every now and then, Ethan would glance at her from the corner of his eye, a measuring look, calculating, assessing her reactions to the confined space and the rhythm of the drive. Lily felt exposed under that gaze, her heartbeat sinking with the tires rolling over the wet streets, a constant reminder that she was in unfamiliar territory. The apartment building they had left behind now looked small, distant, and inconsequential, like a life she had once known and could never reclaim exactly as it had been. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low and controlled. "Do you understand the expectations here?" Lily swallowed, trying to keep her throat from tightening. "I believe so," she said, each word carefully measured. The words sounded timid even to her own ears, but they carried a weight that acknowledged the truth. She was stepping into a world with rules she had never learned, boundaries defined not by law but by authority, presence, and the unspoken edicts of a man whose influence was absolute. The car turned off the main avenue onto a narrow, tree-lined street, the buildings becoming larger, older, and more imposing. The headlights caught on iron gates and stone columns, hinting at a grandeur that seemed almost impossible. As the limousine pulled to a stop before a massive door, Lily realized she was staring at a residence that could swallow her tiny apartment and everything it contained twice over. Ethan stepped out first, opening the door with deliberate ease, the black leather gloves clicking softly as they brushed against the metal handle. He held a hand out to her, not in charity, but as a command, an invitation to enter. Lily hesitated, taking a deep breath, the cold air biting at her cheeks, rain still dripping from her coat. Her hand met his, the grip firm yet not unkind, guiding her through the threshold into a foyer that smelled of polished wood, fresh flowers, and subtle hints of cologne. Every surface gleamed, every light carefully chosen to illuminate the space without glare. As they moved deeper, Ethan spoke again, voice a quiet rumble. "You will have your own quarters here, but understand, the house has a rhythm. You will learn it, or you will be aware of every misstep." Lily nodded, though her mind raced, cataloging every detail, every shadow, every shift in light that could signal a pattern or a rule. The tour continued, and with each room she passed, the reality of her new life became more tangible. The kitchen was pristine, yet commanded attention, the study lined with books and artifacts that whispered of legacy, power, and precision. Ethan paused near a large window overlooking the courtyard, rain pooling in the manicured gardens. He did not smile, did not soften, but Lily felt the subtle acknowledgement of her presence, a quiet recognition that she was expected to adapt, to observe, and perhaps to understand. She sensed the tension between the absolute control he wielded and the potential for connection, a delicate balance that required vigilance and intuition. The clock ticked, the hum of the city beyond the walls fading to a background murmur, and Lily Harper realized that the night had only begun. Every glance from Ethan, every measured word, every silent command in his gaze wove a tapestry of anticipation, uncertainty, and restrained authority. She was caught between awe and apprehension, her thoughts tracing the contours of a life now dictated by presence, power, and unspoken expectations. And in that space, silent and heavy with promise, she understood the challenge ahead, to navigate a world that demanded both compliance and courage, to find footing in a life rewritten by the rhythm of another. The mansion was silent except for the faint drip of rainwater from the eaves and the occasional creak of polished wood as Lily Harper moved through the halls, exploring cautiously, yet with a sense of awe. Each step echoed softly, reminding her that she was no longer in her small apartment, no longer in a life defined by narrow hallways and fluorescent lights, but inside a house that seemed to breathe with its own presence. Ethan Blackwood followed a pace behind her, silent, observing, yet the subtle shift of his shoulders, the tilt of his head, suggested that nothing escaped his notice. The library, with its towering shelves and carefully arranged volumes, smelled faintly of leather and paper, a scent that carried authority and quiet intellect. Lily ran her fingers along the spines of books, noting the titles, the dates, the care with which each was placed, as if each contained a secret he expected her to decode. She turned to look at Ethan, catching the glint of the chandelier in his eyes, sharp and calculating, and felt that mix of tension and curiosity tighten in her chest. A long hallway led to the dining room, where a table for 12 had been set with immaculate precision, crystal glasses aligned, silverware gleaming. Ethan motioned for her to sit, and though she hesitated, she complied, her fingers brushing the cool edge of the table. He poured water with meticulous attention, then took his seat, the chair gliding against the polished floor with a sound that seemed louder than it should have been. "You will learn the rhythm of this house," he said, voice low, almost conversational but carrying weight that made her spine straighten. She nodded, realizing that every object, every surface, Even the spacing of chairs was part of the structure she would need to navigate. Conversation was sparse at first, Ethan asking questions that seemed casual but carried undercurrents of assessment, of boundaries, of what was permissible. Lily answered cautiously, measuring her words, aware that every syllable was observed, evaluated. After the meal, he led her to the conservatory, a glass room where rain streaked the windows in rivulets, turning the outside world into a watercolor of shadow and light. He gestured to the seating area, and they both sat, the silence a tangible thing between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken rules. "This is your space," he said, "yet it is shared, and boundaries are clear." Lily felt the weight of those words, understanding that adaptation required vigilance, perception, and patience. She watched as a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the precise lines of his face, the shadowed planes, the intensity of his gaze. It was a reminder that authority could be both protective and exacting. Hours passed in quiet observation, Lily noting details, Ethan reading her reactions, adjusting, guiding, but never forcing, a balance of control and restraint that demanded she be fully present. She felt a strange combination of awe and tension, recognizing the layers of strategy, of influence, of expectation that defined her new reality. Outside, the storm eased, leaving puddles reflecting the dim glow of the mansion lights, and Lily realized that every decision she made from this moment on would be under the subtle scrutiny of Ethan Blackwood, each movement carrying consequences and opportunities, lessons in power, presence, and adaptability. In that shared quiet, surrounded by the grandeur and precision of the house, she understood that her journey had only just begun, that the rules were unwritten but unyielding, and that the path forward required both observation and courage, a careful dance within the structure of a world she had only just stepped into. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the mansion, casting long, golden streaks across the polished floors and illuminating the intricate patterns of the rugs below. Lily Harper moved carefully, tracing her steps along familiar paths she had begun to memorize the previous night. Yet every shadow and reflection held the potential to reveal something new about the space she now occupied. The kitchen was quiet, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint aroma of rain still clinging to the courtyard outside. Ethan Blackwood appeared from the library doorway, impeccably dressed, his posture flawless, his eyes scanning the room as if measuring the weight of the air itself. Lily felt the pull of his attention, subtle but undeniable, a reminder that even in silence, authority could be exerted without a single word. She poured herself a cup, hands slightly shaking, not from nerves alone, but from the awareness that her movements were being observed, noted, and mentally catalogued. Ethan approached, his footsteps soft yet deliberate, and took the seat opposite her at the expansive kitchen island. The morning sun caught in his hair, highlighting the sharp lines of his face, and Lily found herself caught between admiration and apprehension. He spoke quietly, his voice even but carrying an unspoken command. "Today you will meet the staff. Observe and learn. They will respond to me first, but your presence matters." She nodded, aware that every interaction was a lesson in perception and diplomacy, that each gesture and word would be interpreted not only for content, but for intent. As the staff filtered into the room, Lily noted their composed expressions, the subtle ways they anticipated Ethan's movements, a choreography she was beginning to understand, the dance of deference and attentiveness. She introduced herself carefully, voice steady, and watched as Ethan gave subtle cues, a tilt of the head, a narrowing of the eyes, guiding the room with silent authority. Lily realized that influence did not always roar. Sometimes it whispered in gestures, in eye contact, in the measured rhythm of presence. They moved through the morning tasks together, Ethan demonstrating procedures with precision and patience, Lily observing, then participating under his watchful gaze. At one point, he placed a hand briefly on her shoulder, not a touch of comfort, but a silent reminder of connection, of attention, of control shared in the smallest motion. The day progressed with a rhythm, each hour marked by movement, instruction, and observation. Lily felt her understanding of the mansion deepen, noting not only its structure but the flow of interaction, the hierarchy of attention, and the subtle power dynamics that guided behavior. By afternoon, they were in the study, reviewing documents, discussing schedules, and planning for the week ahead. Ethan's questions were precise, probing, yet tempered with the expectation that she would rise to the challenge, that she would recognize the patterns and respond appropriately. Lily's confidence grew, tempered by respect and an awareness that her role, though newly imposed, was significant, and that mastery required attentiveness and adaptability. As the sun lowered, casting long shadows across the marble floors, she realized that the mansion, the routines, and Ethan's presence were teaching her more than just rules. They were revealing the contours of influence, the weight of authority, and the subtle balance between observation and action. The day ended with a quiet walk through the gardens, the air crisp and filled with the scent of damp earth, and Lily understood that each step forward, each careful observation, was shaping her into someone who could navigate the space, the rules, and the presence of a man who commanded without raising his voice, whose power was precise, deliberate, and profoundly compelling. The evening descended slowly, painting the sky in muted shades of purple and gray, the mansion standing like a sentinel against the fading light. Lily Harper wandered through the grand hallway, her footsteps soft on the thick carpet, ears attuned to the faint sounds of the house settling around them. Each room she passed held an air of precision, the placement of furniture, the arrangement of artwork, the subtle hum of technology integrated seamlessly into the environment, all reinforcing the meticulous order Ethan Blackwood commanded. She paused at a large window overlooking the courtyard, rain from earlier forming puddles that mirrored the lantern's glow, creating a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. Ethan appeared silently at her side, his presence a quiet authority that drew her attention without a single word. He gestured toward the study, and they walked together, the silence between them charged with the weight of observation, expectation, and subtle understanding. Inside, a stack of documents lay on the desk, each labeled and organized with meticulous care, and he motioned for her to sit and review them, explaining that every decision, every appointment, and every interaction in this house carried significance far beyond what was immediately apparent. Lily absorbed his instructions, recognizing patterns, noting details, and beginning to anticipate the rhythm of his expectations, her mind alert to nuance, timing, and intent. He watched her closely, eyes sharp, noting not just comprehension but the ease with which she adapted to new information, the subtle cues in posture and expression that revealed her engagement and attentiveness. Hours passed as they moved through schedules, plans, and contingencies, with Ethan guiding, correcting, and affirming her observations without overt instruction, a lesson in control, perception, and measured influence. At one point, he directed her attention to the greenhouse, explaining the importance of light, air, and environment, emphasizing that attentiveness to small details reflected competence and awareness, traits he valued above all. Lily walked among the plants, noting humidity levels, placement of planters, and the interplay of sunlight through glass panels, each observation a reflection not only of care, but of the discipline required in a household so attuned to order. Ethan remained near the doorway, a silent sentinel, his presence both reassuring and exacting, demonstrating that leadership need not always be spoken to be understood. As twilight deepened, the mansion's interior shifted, shadows lengthening, lights taking on a warmer hue, and Lily felt a sense of accomplishment, tempered by the recognition that mastery of this environment demanded ongoing attention, awareness, and adaptability. Dinner was served in the dining room, the table set with immaculate precision, and Lily participated with measured composure, serving with awareness of space, timing, and demeanor, each action observed, assessed, and noted by Ethan with a quiet intensity that underscored the balance of authority and cooperation that defined their interaction. After the meal, they moved to the lounge, the fire casting soft light across the room, illuminating the contours of Ethan's face and the subtle expressions that passed in silence between them. Lily realized that her understanding of the house, of him, and of the unspoken rhythms of their coexistence was growing, and that each day, each observation, each careful step, was shaping her ability to navigate the delicate balance between presence, compliance, and influence. In the stillness, the mansion seemed to breathe with them, a living space that demanded attention, respect, and insight, and Lily Harper understood that the lessons of the day were only the beginning of a journey that would test observation, adaptability, and understanding in ways she had never anticipated, guiding her through a world structured by precision, awareness, and the quiet authority of Ethan Blackwood. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long, soft rays across the marble floors and illuminating the precise lines of the furniture, highlighting the order and attention to detail that defined Ethan Blackwood's world. Lily Harper walked slowly through the main hall, absorbing every nuance, the subtle placement of artwork, the carefully arranged lighting, the quiet hum of technology integrated seamlessly into the home. She paused at a window overlooking the fountain, watching the water ripple in delicate arcs as sunlight danced across the surface, each movement reflecting patterns of symmetry and balance, the same patterns Ethan seemed to expect in every action she took. He appeared beside her, silently, the faint scent of cologne mingling with the morning air, commanding presence without a word. "Observation is everything," he said, voice low, deliberate, carrying weight that demanded focus. Lily nodded, noting how his eyes scanned the courtyard, the way he read the environment and anticipated motion, a skill that combined instinct, knowledge, and attention to detail. They moved together through the house, Ethan guiding her through the routines of the staff, the organization of schedules, the subtle ways the household functioned with precision and efficiency. Lily listened, internalizing each instruction, watching the interactions, learning to anticipate needs, to perceive patterns, and to respond appropriately without hesitation. At breakfast, the table was set with meticulous care, each place precisely aligned, utensils polished, napkins folded with exactness. Ethan observed her as she moved through the motions, serving herself tea, noting her posture, timing, and attentiveness, his presence a quiet evaluation of comprehension and adaptability. Later, they explored the library, rows of books stretching from floor to ceiling, each title carefully chosen, each volume aligned with intent. Lily traced her fingers along the spines, absorbing the order, recognizing the underlying structure of a space designed to convey knowledge, control, and legacy. Ethan spoke occasionally, offering insight into the contents, asking questions that required her attention and reasoning, testing her observation and judgment. The day unfolded with a rhythm, a combination of instruction, observation, and silent evaluation, each task reinforcing the lessons of awareness, focus, and adaptability. Lily felt a growing understanding of the mansion, its flow, its order, and the subtle ways in which Ethan's presence influenced every corner, every interaction, every choice. In the afternoon, they walked the gardens, the air crisp with the scent of damp earth, the foliage glistening with morning dew, reflecting a world carefully maintained, requiring attention and respect. Ethan's steps were measured, deliberate, teaching through movement, demonstrating that influence and authority could exist in the quietest of gestures. Lily followed closely, absorbing each nuance, noting the relationship between observation, timing, and action, recognizing the importance of understanding the rhythm of both space and presence. As the day waned and the sun began to lower behind the distant skyline, casting long shadows across the grounds, Lily realized that the mansion, its order, and Ethan's oversight were not merely about control, but about cultivating perception, adaptability, and awareness. Each step, each interaction, each glance offered a lesson, a subtle test, and a chance to understand the careful balance between observation and influence, between presence and power, that defined life within the walls of Ethan Blackwood's world. And she understood that mastery would require focus, patience, and a willingness to read the silent language that governed everything around her. The evening had settled into a calm rhythm, the mansion bathed in the soft glow of ambient lights that cast gentle shadows across the high ceilings and ornate walls. Lily Harper walked slowly through the corridors, her mind replaying the lessons of the day, each movement, each interaction carefully catalogued in her thoughts. The subtle click of her heels on the polished floors echoed faintly, reminding her that in this house every sound mattered, every gesture carried weight, and every glance could be read. Ethan Blackwood appeared silently at the end of the hall, his presence commanding attention without intrusion, and she felt the familiar tightening in her chest as their eyes met. He gestured toward the study, and they moved together, the silence between them filled with unspoken understanding and the quiet anticipation of instruction. Once inside, he laid out documents, schedules, and notes with meticulous care, guiding her through each item with deliberate clarity, explaining the reasoning behind every decision, every arrangement, and every interaction that shaped the household. Lily listened intently, absorbing the details, noticing patterns, and beginning to anticipate expectations without prompting, her awareness sharpening with each passing moment. As they progressed, he paused to observe her, eyes narrow yet assessing, noting how she processed the information, how she adapted to the structure, and how she navigated the subtle nuances of authority and influence. Later, they moved to the conservatory, the glass panes reflecting the garden outside, droplets still clinging to the leaves and glass in shimmering patterns. Ethan gestured for her to sit, and together they observed the interplay of light, shadow, and structure, using the space as a lesson in observation, patience, and discernment. Lily noted how even the smallest elements, the positioning of a chair, the angle of a window, the flow of light across a surface, carried meaning, teaching her to see beyond the obvious and recognize the patterns that governed the environment. The mansion itself seemed to respond to their presence, each step, each movement subtly altering the perception of space, creating an unspoken dialogue between authority, awareness, and action. After a period of silent observation, Ethan guided her through the procedures of the household staff, demonstrating expectations through example, requiring Lily to absorb, interpret, and execute with precision. Every interaction reinforced the lessons of attentiveness, awareness, and adaptability, teaching her the importance of understanding hierarchy, rhythm, and influence without overt instruction. As twilight deepened and the house settled into the soft hum of evening routines, Lily walked through the gardens, the air cool and fragrant, observing patterns in nature, architecture, and the interplay of light and shadow, each detail reinforcing the subtle lessons she had been absorbing throughout the day. Ethan walked alongside her, quiet but present, a steady reminder of the balance between observation and understanding, influence and compliance. Lily Harper felt the growing confidence that came from understanding the rhythms of this world, the structure of authority, and the significance of subtlety in presence and action, realizing that each careful observation, each measured step, and each learned response was shaping her into someone capable of navigating the intricate web of order, expectation, and influence that defined life within the walls of Ethan Blackwood's mansion. And she understood that the lessons of today were only a prelude to the challenges, discoveries, and insights that awaited her in the days to come. The night had deepened, cloaking the mansion in shadows that stretched long across the polished floors and high ceilings, the flickering of the fireplace casting subtle, shifting light that made every corner appear alive. Lily Harper moved through the halls, her footsteps deliberate and measured, sensing the flow of the house and the rhythm Ethan Blackwood expected her to follow. Each turn, each doorway, each space held lessons in observation, control, and perception, and she found herself reading the environment with heightened awareness, noting the placement of furniture, the alignment of frames, the subtle cues of temperature and sound that defined the mansion's atmosphere. Ethan appeared quietly beside her, the faint scent of cologne and leather signaling his presence before she could fully process it, and his eyes scanned her with a precise intensity that made her aware of both her own actions and the subtle implications of each movement. He led her to the music room, a space filled with instruments carefully arranged, polished to perfection, each note and key reflecting the meticulous nature of the household. Lily approached a grand piano, her fingers brushing the keys lightly, testing the resonance, feeling the precision required to elicit harmony from the instrument. And in that moment she realized that understanding the mansion required not just observation but sensitivity, attentiveness, and patience. Ethan watched without interruption, allowing her to explore the space while silently communicating expectations through posture, glance, and the measured cadence of his presence. The room became a study in discipline and perception, every movement of Lily's hands and posture conveying understanding or hesitation, every breath a subtle interaction with the rhythm of the environment and the unspoken authority that Ethan embodied. Hours passed with a blend of silence and subtle guidance, each action a lesson in presence, awareness, and adaptability. Lily felt her senses sharpen, noting the interplay of light, sound, and movement, learning to anticipate the influence of space and authority on behavior. Outside, the rain had returned in soft patters, creating reflections on the courtyard and casting the gardens in muted, shifting light. Ethan guided her to the terrace, and together they observed the patterns of water on stone, the movement of leaves in the breeze, the subtle changes in shadow as lanterns flickered to life. He spoke quietly, each word deliberate, emphasizing attention to detail, observation, and the importance of understanding the unseen forces that shaped the household. Lily absorbed the lessons, internalizing both the overt structure and the subtle currents of influence that Ethan navigated with ease. By the time the evening deepened further, casting long shadows across the mansion and gardens, Lily understood that her adaptation was no longer a matter of rote learning, but of sensing rhythm, interpreting cues, and balancing presence with comprehension. Each interaction, each observation, each carefully considered step strengthened her ability to operate within the structure Ethan had established, revealing layers of precision, expectation, and influence that required both vigilance and intuition. In the quiet of the terrace, watching the city lights shimmer through rain-soaked air, she realized that the journey was only beginning, that mastery of presence, perception, and understanding would define her place in the mansion, and that the unspoken lessons she had absorbed today would guide her through challenges, opportunities, and the intricate balance of authority and awareness in the days to come. The night deepened into a velvet stillness, the mansion wrapped in the quiet glow of lanterns and subtle lighting that traced every contour of the grand hallways and high ceilings. Lily Harper walked slowly, her steps deliberate, absorbing the environment with heightened attention, noting every shadow, every reflection, and every subtle shift in the rhythm of the house. She paused near the library, where moonlight spilled through the tall windows, illuminating rows of leather-bound books and casting long, intricate patterns across the polished floors. Ethan Blackwood appeared silently beside her, the faint scent of his cologne signaling his presence long before he spoke. "You are beginning to understand," he said quietly, his voice steady, controlled, carrying weight and subtle encouragement at the same time. Lily nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anticipation, her senses sharpened by the constant awareness of his scrutiny and guidance. They moved together into the conservatory, the glass panes reflecting the moonlight and the carefully curated greenery inside, droplets of condensation shimmering on leaves and glass in delicate patterns. Ethan gestured for her to sit in the center of the room, the marble floors cool beneath her feet, and together they observed the subtle movements of light and shadow, practicing the quiet art of observation and presence. He pointed out the angles of reflection, the interplay of illumination and darkness, and the significance of small details that could easily be overlooked but carried meaning within the structure of the house. Lily followed his guidance, noting how minor shifts in posture, timing, and attention could convey understanding and awareness, realizing that each action, no matter how small, was part of a larger pattern of influence and perception. The evening passed with a rhythm of learning, observation, and subtle instruction, Ethan allowing her to explore while gently correcting, guiding, and demonstrating through example, emphasizing the importance of awareness, timing, and adaptation. They walked the corridors together, passing through rooms where the placement of objects, the alignment of furnishings, and the interplay of light and shadow all contributed to a subtle language of control and understanding. Lily absorbed each lesson, practicing attentiveness and precision, and recognizing the balance between presence and discretion, observation and interpretation. Later, they moved into the main hall, where Ethan demonstrated the flow of household activity, showing how movements, gestures, and attentiveness could influence outcomes without overt instruction. Lily followed closely, practicing, adjusting, and anticipating, feeling her confidence grow as she navigated the space, interpreting cues, and responding with awareness. As the moon rose higher, casting long shadows across the mansion and gardens, Lily realized that the lessons of the night were not only about understanding the house or Ethan's expectations, but about mastering perception, influence, and the subtleties of presence. Each observation, each measured movement, each careful response had sharpened her senses, heightened her awareness, and deepened her understanding of the delicate balance between authority, influence, and adaptability. Standing on the terrace at the end of the evening, looking out over the courtyard where moonlight danced on wet stone, Lily Harper understood that her journey was only beginning, that the mansion, its rhythm, and Ethan Blackwood's presence would continue to teach her, guiding her through a world of structure, expectation, and nuanced power that required vigilance, insight, and a growing mastery of both observation and action.